This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I just wanted to tell you real quick, I'm going to be posting over on locals.com and moving away from Patreon, because Patreon supports Black Lives Matter and all that crap, and I don't want to have anything to do with that. But so if you are a Patreon supporter, you can continue to support me there. That's fine. But if you believe like I do and don't want to give any money to Patreon, you can go over to chuckholton.locals.com and support me over there. I'd appreciate it. The money that gets sent through Patreon and Locals goes to help the people that we meet when we're traveling. We're going to be doing a lot more of that coming up soon. So thanks for watching. I appreciate all of our patrons and all of the support that we get through them. Okay, on to today's show. I have kind of a roundup of immigration information. There's a report out from the United Nations about immigration. I've got some sound from that, some interesting interviews with people about immigration in Venezuela, and it's just all good information. So I'm just going to kind of agglomerate it all here and let you see it all in one place. So check this out. There's some really good stuff here that will give you good data, good ammunition for talking about the immigration issue. I'm going to be doing a lot more reporting on this. I'm going to Morocco and to Greece next week to do some reporting on immigration there, and you'll be surprised at how much the immigration issues over there sort of mirror the problems we're having on the U.S. southern border, and may even be able to find some interesting ways that the United States could discourage immigration if we had the political will to do so, which we obviously don't. So this first guy I'm going to show you is Filippo Grandi. He's the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. UNHCR is a pro-migrant, pro-refugee organization that's dedicated to helping refugees around the world. They're not necessarily dedicated to increasing immigration like the International Organization for Migration is, but they do sort of facilitate migration by helping out people in need. I guess you could say in some way we do that too, so I'm not going to definitely hold that against them. But if you listen carefully to what he says about the United States, he did not like when Kamala Harris said, "do not come." He didn't like that she encouraged people not to come, even though he admits that the United States is buried in asylum requests right now with over 1 million people in line for asylum. Check it out.
COVID-19 seems to have had no impact on some of the key root causes that push people to flee. War, violence, discrimination, they have continued no matter what throughout the pandemic. This is why the report, this year's report, which applies to 2020, indicates a further increase. We went from 79.5 million refugees and displaced in the previous report to 82.4 million this time round, an increase of 3 million. We have seen last year, and it has continued, by the way, throughout the first 6 months of 2021, we have seen some fresh displacement situations. Northern Mozambique, 700,000 internally displaced people. In the Sahel, where we estimate there's about 3 million people, refugees or displaced, of whom 750,000 under this report alone, so 2020. Then you have Tigray, northern Ethiopia. We estimate that up to 1 million people may have been freshly displaced by the conflict that started last October. And this is a trend that continues. So I'm worried that if the international community is not able to stop these conflicts, we will continue to see a rise in the numbers. And next year I'll be back here talking to public opinions and saying, unfortunately, the job of my organization, instead of going down, has increased again. It's a colossal challenge. The US has the largest backlog of asylum claims of any country in the world, almost 1 million people. So to manage that will require massive investments. But I am encouraged by what I heard also in Washington in my visit, by the Secretary of Homeland Security, and by other important political leaders. The message was probably broader, but of course that very stark sentence was reported a bit in isolation.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris in Guatemala on Monday said she had robust talks with Guatemalan President Alejandro Yamatei on the need to fight corruption and deter undocumented immigration to the United States from the Central American nation, where she had one resounding message for those considering making the dangerous journey.
Do not come. Do not come.
I hope in isolation, because what I heard from the US government system in Washington was, like I said, a more complex response.
And when they do leave, it usually has to do with one of two reasons. Either because they are fleeing some harm, or because they simply cannot satisfy their basic needs by staying at home. They cannot simply satisfy the needs that they have to raise their children by staying at home.
Yeah, so here we have Kamala Harris parroting the normal responses for why people come to the United States. Number one, that they're fleeing violence and oppression. Number two, that they are unable to survive based on what they can make in their home countries. Neither of these are actually true, at least not completely so. If they are being oppressed, they can very often go to other places within their same country where they wouldn't be oppressed, because it's not the government that's oppressing these people, it's gangs. Number two, or they could go to any of the 10 countries they cross getting to the United States and be just fine. Number two, they don't need it. It's not that they're not poor. Yes, they're poor. It's not that they don't have a hard time making a living with what they can make in their home countries. They are having a hard time. The lie here is that they must come to the United States or they can't survive. That is not true. And trying to lie to these people and tell them that the only way you can make it is to get to the U.S. where you pay $15 an hour, get paid $15 an hour, not telling them about the taxes they'll have to pay, not telling them about the dangers they'll have to face crossing the border, not telling them about the fact that they're going to separate their families by sending one breadwinner to the United States and then send remittances back. There's so many more issues to this. If she knew what she was talking about, she could have brought some of those up, but she did not, which shows that she's either uninformed or is intentionally obfuscating the issue or oversimplifying the issue. Meanwhile, American governors who are serious about defending the U.S. southern border, like Governor Abbott in Texas, are taking matters into their own hands because they know they can't trust the federal government to secure the southern border. And so here's what Governor Abbott had to say about that last week. This is awesome. Check it out.
I will announce next week the plan for the state of Texas to begin building the border wall in the state of Texas. It's not so much the unaccompanied minors. You have very dangerous people who are involved in human trafficking, drug trafficking, people that if you encounter, you don't know if you're going to walk away safely from. You should not have to face that danger in your community. A change is needed.
Now, real quick, let's move on to Venezuela. If you've been following my reporting, you know I've been doing a lot of reporting over the last several years on this issue. Venezuela is an absolute circus of freaks. I mean, it's horrible in that country, and everybody in that country who can leave is leaving. Some of them had to go back because of COVID, because it just got even more difficult in Colombia or wherever they were. But by and large, everybody's leaving Venezuela, and the numbers of people coming out of that country are rising yet again, which means a bigger burden on the United States and a bigger burden on Colombia and Brazil, as well as Ecuador and any other place that Venezuelans can get to. So pray for Venezuela, man. What a mess that is. And listen to these experts talking about what's going on inside Venezuela right now.
Facts for Venezuelan refugees and migrants are stark. Over half don't have enough to eat. 80 to 90% have lost their source of income. 1 in 4 children are separated from their families during the journey, and women and girls experience particular challenges such as gender-based violence and lack of access to sexual and reproductive health services.
We are trying to help governments achieve as well is how to prevent Venezuelan refugees and migrants from using irregular paths and falling in the hands of people who exploit them in order to facilitate their crossings into neighboring countries.
Still crossing, to give you just an order of idea, we're looking at, well, they're very much estimates because the borders are closed and therefore people are using irregular entry points. But we are looking in the past few weeks at about 2,000 Venezuelans a day getting into Colombia. We're seeing a lot, but really a lot of women with children on their own coming out at the moment. Then what? Then they arrive, and because they've entered irregularly, it can be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to get regular status. What's been incredible since the start of COVID, in a region where we had a vast majority of refugees and migrants, let's say 80-85%, were self-reliant, not necessarily living very well, but at least self-reliant. COVID has had absolutely the reverse effect, that now we are looking at a population that's really dependent on humanitarian assistance.
Okay, that's all I've got for today, folks. Thanks for watching The Hot Zone. I just want you to understand the reason I'm showing you all this stuff is because immigration is the new war. It's the new warfare. It's the new conflict. Migrants around the world from developing countries are realizing that they don't need to invade to conquer a larger, stronger, richer country. All they need to do is, instead of bringing guns, they bring women and children. Those are the weapons. And everybody should get to live where they want to live, but the United States has got to learn to deal with this issue. It's a very complex and thorny problem, and that's one of the reasons I keep reporting on it, because the more we understand about it, the smarter we can be about pushing our elected representatives to do smart things and not just repeat platitudes when it comes to dealing with illegal immigration. Thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media.
Copyright 2021.